on my end. Oh god, I hope this works both ways. Hello everyone. This is our first live stream of Couchin Courtside. If you guys don't know who we are, my name is Johnny, and along with me as my co-host as always is Jon. Jon, how we doing?
Johnny, how you doing, man? Happy Monday.
Oh, happy Monday. So, if you guys have not listened to us before, I'll just give you guys a little rundown of where we are. We came up with Couch and Courtside because, like me and Jon, we've known each other since 2006, I
Yeah,
guess. Yeah?
yeah.
Yeah. So, basically, what that is like, we've gotten along with a lot of things, whether it comes to shows, music, movies. But the one thing we have love for is basketball. And so I think it's really fitting for us to kind of just talk basketball left and right when it comes uh, to this. Like, we text each other a lot, we talk to each other a lot. So I think it's pretty cool to kind of give a little glimpse of what we do, but kind of in a bigger format. So
We talk a lot of shit.
yeah, we do. So hopefully you guys will kind of get through it. So if it's your first time here, that's cool. But yeah, our biggest thing is normally we'll start off. There's a lot of news coming on. It is the NBA playoffs. But before we start all that, Jon, did you know E3 was started this past Saturday?
I I knew because you texted me about it and asked me if I watched it. And I think I follow a lot of like gaming sites like Polygon and Kotaku, but I just didn't realize it was this week. It's kind of like lost its luster because the consoles are already out and like no one can get one. And
Yeah.
so it's like, well, what's the point, right?
No, I hear you. So, I was just, I was at work and was a little bored, and then I was kind of looking through my feed, and they were mentioning E3. I'm like, really? I'm like, oh, I didn't realize. Like, when did they decide to do this on a Saturday? I mean, I get it during when people can attend these conferences. It was like, during the day, like they started on like usually Monday or Tuesday, and then they'll end before Friday, but having it start on a Saturday was kind of like a weird start date for me.
I thought the weird thing for me was that I'm a huge Battlefield fan. I hated Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 1 because I don't like World War One and World War Two shooters. I'm a modern shooter and I don't like Call of Duty.
Yeah.
So when I heard that Battlefield 2042 was having its reveal, of course I tuned in to the premiere. I think it was a Wednesday. And then they were like, tune in on Sunday for live gameplay. I'm like, who the hell shows something on Sunday? And so like yesterday, I finally put two and two together. I'm like, oh, it's E3. That's why they're showing on Sunday.
Oh, that makes sense. So, from the games that you have seen, is there anything that catches your fancy? Anything that got you excited?
2042. That's
2042?
probably yeah. I mean, I don't have an Xbox Series X, so I can't really do anything about that. I can't find one in store or in stock anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and not only that, but I can play all these games on my PC. I was fortunate to buy a PC that has a 3060 Ti, so once those games actually do end up coming out to Game Pass, if I wanted to actually try them out, I could potentially just play on my computer. Um, I will say this though, there was supposed to be a Final Fantasy game that was made by Team Ninja, Final Fantasy Origins, and I was like, oh my god, Team Ninja, they make Neo. I've put thousands of hours in Neo 1 and 2 on PS4 and PS5 respectively. That game looks like garbage. I just can't believe that Final Fantasy would allow them to put their name on that.
Is that the one that people can download it on the PS5 right now and demo it and then give
I
feedback? Or is
I
that the other
I
Final
think
Fantasy one?
there's Final Fantasy 14, there's Final Fantasy 7 remake just dropped on PS5 as well.
Mhm.
Um I don't know if this one has a beta yet, but it just looks like shit.
Right. So, oh, if it is, then yeah, I know there was one that they released that exclusively for Sony that you can download and then you'd be able to give feedback. So, it might be that one. Elder Ring is the only one that really caught my eye
Yeah.
simply because, you know, George R. R. Martin being the driving force of like writing the game actually gets me a little bit excited to do so. I just saw new footage of the new Forza game. I love how gorgeous Forza looks, but man, sometimes with racing games, unless I have like the whole kit, I just kind of don't want to play it anymore.
Yeah, I hear you. Like I dabble with Forza Horizon 4 every once and again. I got I think 3 months of Game Pass for $1 on my PC.
Yeah.
and it's nice because I have an ultra wide monitor. But I don't like sitting at a desk playing games. I like to play them on my TV.
Right.
So. But like, let me ask you this: what does R. R. Martin do for you? Like writing a Japanese game, like what does that do for you?
I don't know if it's the Japanese. I think it's the world building. He's
Okay,
very good at building kind of like different characters and kind of the mythology within the world.
okay,
Game of Thrones, at least the first 4 seasons, makes a lot of sense, and a lot of that is from R. R. Martin.
mm-hmm.
Uh, when the show kind of took like a downturn, it was because the new writers had to come up with what they perceive R. R. Martin would write when he hasn't dropped any new books as of late. So they couldn't adapt anything. So that's why when Game of Thrones, the first 4 seasons were way stronger than what we got towards the end. And he's just a master at that. I've only read 2 of his books because one, they're very dense and I just don't have time for it. Some people are very big into reading like fantasy novels, and I am not the biggest fantasy novel reader. I love
Yeah,
watching the movies and the shows. I just reading it is a little bit different for me just because they come up with a lot of jargon and I don't have time to remember all of it as we kind of move through.
for sure. So what you're saying is the latter half of Game of Thrones, which I've never seen, mind you, is kind of like the episode of South Park when Cartman is Osmo 3000, and he comes up with all the movies that Adam Sandler writes, and they just make millions of dollars off of
Yeah,
it.
pretty much.
Okay, all right,
It is
all
pretty
right,
much. Pretty
all
much.
right.
So, all right, guys. So we're gonna get into some basketball news. If you watch any of the highlights yesterday, Kyrie Irving, shoot, man, his ankle. I feel bad for the guy because he's been lighting it up this postseason. But let me ask you, John, when we're talking about the Nets, Game 5 tomorrow, there's no Kyrie, there's no Harden. It's going to be KD and a bunch of scrubs. I said it right. They are third-rate players. I don't even think those guys are second-rate players. They really are. What can the Nets actually do to make this actually competitive with the Bucks? Because unless either Harden or Kyrie come back, I expect the Bucks to win this series now, simply because I don't think KD can do this by himself.
Well, I think you and I had a caveat, in our earlier podcast where we said the Nets need to be healthy. If healthy, they will win the championship. But now they have not one, but 2 of their stars out right now. And there's not a damn thing that they can do to make this a competitive series against this Bucks team if they don't have at least 2 of their superstar players. Kyrie, I mean, like you said, I feel bad for the guy. That was a pretty terrible fall. I mean, thank goodness there was nothing broken. There was no structural damage, but that was a really bad ankle sprain.
Yeah.
Like you said, he's been lighting it up. The guy can score with the best of them. And he brings so much to the table from a dynamic perspective because you can't double team KD when you have Kyrie on the floor.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like you're saying, you just have a bunch of, I hate to call them third string guys, but they're not, above replacement players in the team. And so therefore there's nothing they can do. If those 2 guys don't come back, the series is over.
John's much nicer than me. They are third-rate basketball players. Like, they are. I mean, like, Blake Griffin is your guy. Like, we were talking about this offline. Like, this is when Joe Harris is about to make his money. And I'm telling you, he ain't going to make his money with this, man. Like, this man earned that money because he knew he was going to be the third, maybe the third scorer, but obviously the 4th scorer on a team that is stacked. But now you just elevate him to the 2 spot. Have you ever seen Joe Harris actually get his own shot with the ball?
No, I have not. But here's my question for you, though, Johnny. 2 guys who got the same kind of deal, who have the exact same role on their teams: Joe Harris, Davis Bertans. Who would you rather have?
Davis Bertans.
You'd rather have Davis Bertans?
Okay.
Oh, come on, man.
I mean, you can't teach height, dude. I don't know what to tell you.
Come on, man.
Also with the team structure, I I know Westbrook will keep feeding him the ball at some point. He's going to keep shooting.
I think Bertans had a couple of like 0 games, like where he had 0 in all 5 stats after being on the floor for like 20 minutes.
He has never been right ever since he left San Antonio.
Oh man!
Like you pop coach that man up. So that's what it is.
I'll give you that.
You can hear Roman being a little guest in the background here as well.
I apologize.
So let's talk about this. Like let's kind of delve through this, because I know when we were talking offline with the Nets that you were trying to say that like maybe KD wasn't going to get the same level of scrutiny as LeBron. Well, I was saying that I really do think that he will. It'll just come in a different form. What do you think KD won't get this same scrutiny as what LeBron did in the first round?
He's not held to the same standard as LeBron James, right? No professional athlete, probably save for like Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, and Mike Tyson, are held to the same standards as LeBron James, right? I mean, he's expected to win all the time, and it's like his gift is his curse. His ability to have been so good for so long follows him into his 18th year in the league. Whereas we talked about this briefly yesterday offline. You know, KD's had an MVP level player around him his entire career, but people don't really judge him based off of that. They judge him based off of the fact that he is a guy who, again, like we said before, you can't double team him because you always have a Stephen Curry on the floor, a Kyrie Irving on the floor, a Russell Westbrook on the floor, a James Harden on the floor. And so he's so damn deadly because of the fact that he's always had a guy on the floor who can get their own shot. Well, now we're going to actually see what KD can do. Sans having a guy, like we just said, with Joe Harris, who can't get his own shot. So we'll see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time KD is going to play without a legitimate superstar since rookie Westbrook, right? Like, it really is been that long because, like I said, he's had Westbrook, he's had Curry, now he's had, Kyrie, people that can get their own shot when they need to. But I was saying, the reason why I think he'll get the same level of scrutiny is just two different things. And it's funny because LeBron and Durant are like the opposite ends of the decision making, right? I think the only time that we went overzealous, either as fans or as media, is when LeBron decided to go to Miami. We understood why he went to Miami. We just didn't like the presentation of how he did it. Everyone we keep forgetting that he made a big donation to the Boys and Girls Club, right? During that, but it gets overshadowed because he's taking his talents to South Beach. But we, at least in the NBA eyes, I understood why he left Cleveland to go to Miami. It makes a lot of sense. Durant, we understand why he would leave Oklahoma. But why did he have to go to the Warriors? That team was already stacked, right? And so the picture you showed me, my next chapter, that man will always get ripped for that every single time. And to me, I think if I would rather have LeBron's scrutiny, because you're making fun of me not winning finals every year, which basically tells me that I am ripping you for making the finals almost like every year. With Durant, we're making fun of him because we think he's a snake, right? Whether it's on Twitter when he claps back at people with his burner account, or actually I'm very proud that he's doing it on his own account now, just clapping back at people. But we always have that lingering feeling, and it's something that he's never going to escape. Every time he loses, it's never going to be him. And to me, that's a little bit more damning than what LeBron kind of goes through.
Yeah, and you also forgot a very recent scandal involving Kevin Durant as well. When he's getting into a on-court scuffle, he has his own bodyguard running to the court.
God, man,
to protect him. I mean, come on, man.
That was kind of
terrible look. Terrible look.
It was a bad look. But since we're on kind of talking about LeBron, if you guys don't know, Jon is a big LeBron fan. Huge. If there was a fan club for LeBron fans, I'm pretty sure he's up there somewhere. Up in the top echelon, top 1%.
If you could see my closet, I probably have 34 pairs of LeBrons. I have a photo of LeBron in front of or behind me and my wife's like wedding sand that we exchanged when we got married. I mean, I'm a huge LeBron James fan.
Yeah.
I try to be objective, but I'm a huge LeBron James fan.
So, growing up in SoCal, I'm a Lakers fan. I grew up watching the Lakers. This is kind of, as someone that is by the vicinity, that's kind of who you root for. So, this was these past 3 years have been the first time that me and John have aligned in rooting for something.
That is correct.
So, we now know that the Lakers are going through an off season, that Magic Johnson says that Rob Pelinka has a lot of work to do. Magic, come on, man. Like, that's some very generic tweets. But I think he is right, though.
He's very right.
The Lakers do need to do work. This is LeBron's last year going into the frame. AD is on year 2 of his 5-year contract. And who's the only other person signed right now with the Lakers? Is it just... It's them two and one other person.
Kuz.
Right?
Kuz got that 3-year deal.
Okay, so it's only those 3. Everyone else either has a team option or they're potential free agent.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into what Rob Pelinka should be doing or the Lakers as general doing, one of my friends on Twitter asked, 3 years in, what grade would you give LeBron as his tenure as a Laker? So I'll ask you first, John. What would be your grade for LeBron's tenure so far, and why?
I mean, they won a championship last year. So, I'm going to try to be objective here. I'm going to give a score that maybe some people might think I'm being kind of homerish. I'm not going to give him an A or an A-. I'm going to give him a B+, right? His first year, he got injured. That wasn't his fault. He tore his groin. That sucked. He came back. They missed the playoffs. Second year, they came back. They ran it back. They won the championship. They brought in AD. They won in their first year. And they won resoundingly. They went through some pretty good teams. Yes, they probably could have gone through the Clippers to make it a bit more punctuated, if you will. But they won against some good teams, right? This year, it was derailed by injuries, unfortunately. I mean, we talked about this before on the pod. I don't think what Solomon Hill did was intentional. It just sucked, right? And it basically just was an unfortunate situation for all parties involved. I'd say B+ for LeBron. Sorry to dance around the question itself. But the thing is that his success hinges so much on the health of Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. So, a little bit different. I'm giving him an A because when he decided to come to the Lakers, it was a championship or bust. That's it. That's all it is. This isn't him trying to develop new culture within the Lakers. This isn't him trying to... Because think about it. When he won that championship in Cleveland, he already cemented himself. I mean, he cemented himself before, but that just kind of threw it off, right? So
cherry
everything else is cherry on top. So he's not here to kind of bring or restore legacy to the Lakers, right? So to me, he's here just as a mercenary. 4 years, it's championship or bust. He got us a championship, whether you agree it's a Mickey Mouse championship or not. That's kind of up to you.
Bullshit.
So I'm giving him an A.
Okay.
He got us a championship.
Yeah,
that's fine. It could be an A+ if he gets one next year.
I mean, one in 3 years, right? I mean, that's not bad.
That's not bad. 1 in 3 years. So now we're going to talk about what the Lakers need to do. And let me tell you what my number one priority is. If I was Rob Pelinka, I'm talking to Anthony Davis, and in a room, I tell him, call all your trainers up right now. I want them in the same room. And whatever contract that they have with AD, here's the money. You're fired, you're let go, you're fired. This man cannot stay healthy. It could be because it's his body. But like I said, I don't know if he's changed his regimen up to actually kind of deal with this. Like, shouldn't this man do some yoga or something at this point just to be more flexible?
I 100% agree with what you're saying. I think that whomever he is relying upon to take care of his body and to treat him, especially when you contrast that versus LeBron James, who he obviously has to spend a ton of time with and who he's learning from, right? They were basically co-MVPs of the team last year in the finals. You're 100% correct. Like, they are doing this man a deep, deep disservice. But I'll also submit to you this, and I don't want to take AD off the hook because remember, he came into the season fat and out of shape. Yeah. Okay, let's get that out of the way. But if you look at all the teams that went deep into the final to the playoffs last year, all of those teams have dealt with injuries because of the truncated offseason. All of these teams did. Now, that's not really an excuse for AD to again to come back to the season fat and out of shape, but they just didn't have sufficient time to get their bodies necessarily right. But I agree with you, man. I mean, he has to do something different. He has to take his body more seriously. It is literally the tool which he uses to make himself money,
Yeah.
and for his success.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of like the number one thing. Number two, and I'm gonna pose this question out here. I so everywhere LeBron goes, he is, he gets the nickname the GM, right? But it's apt. I think he tries to build teams that I think he sees where the end destination is, which is whether it's playing defense or to complement him. I get it. This is why there's certain players that he wants. But let me ask you, this is, like I said, the last year of his contract that he's going in. I get it. He's on the decline of his prime. He's still very great. Don't get me wrong, but like we're starting to see, and he's just not gonna be as healthy as we will assume. Like this man is
Mm-hmm.
human.
Yeah.
When we decide to construct people to come in, do we still try to build around LeBron, or are we gonna actually try to build around AD?
Well, I think this team this year was built more around 80 than it was for LeBron, right? I mean, yes, you brought in Schroeder to maybe take some of the heat off of LeBron, but I mean, he was more so to replace Rondo, that loss that they had with Rondo. But he was actually replacing two players, Rondo and Danny Green,
Mm-hmm.
right? But like you just said a moment ago, you got to bring in shooters, man. And this team sorely lacked shooters. What they were trying to do for Anthony Davis was protect him by bringing in bigger guys so that he didn't have to play the five as much as he did last year, because perhaps maybe they thought that that was the reason why his body was so banged up. They brought in Marcus Gasol, they brought in Montrezl Harrell, mid-season. They brought in, oh my God, Andre Drummond. I cannot believe how horrible he fit on the team. But they brought in Drummond. They brought in guys to try to take some of that load off of Anthony Davis, who missed 30 plus games this year, right?
Yeah.
And the Lakers were missing firepower from distance. I mean, shooting and making three-pointers is an extremely important point of today's modern NBA game. And so the fact that they didn't have that really hampered them. It's funny, before the beginning of this season, I was like, oh man, we got Wes Matthews. And you were like, dude, he's a shell of himself. And I was like, no, man, Wes Matthews is gonna be this and that and this and that. You're like, dude, he's a shell of himself. and you were 100% correct. So that you have to get guys who can shoot, make shots. And here's the thing. Yes, as we just joked about with Davis Bertans and Joe Harris, those like shooters get paid, but there are guys out there who can make 3-point shots who don't necessarily get paid $80 million, over 5 years. You could still get some guys who can shoot the ball. So the Lakers have to find shooters.
Yeah, that's kind of the big thing. They need knockdown shooters. Like we make fun of Danny Green all the time because last year, like they won in spite of him. Like at least offensively, right? Like that man was bricking threes left and right. But we kind of need snipers like that to offset where everything is, because AD needs to operate in the post and then move out. But with Drummond and then Marcus Gasol, he's operating outside going in, and that just doesn't work for AD whatsoever. But yeah, that's a question that I had, because I was talking to someone else, and he was bringing up to me that big men really aren't as important as they should be. Now, that rings hollow to me because of how Embiid is doing, and before the Nuggets got eliminated, Jokic was doing as well. Like they're still used for a big man. But he's thinking in the context of this is LeBron's last year. We got to try to win. So if I called Portland right now and I said AD for Dame and then make the contracts work, would you be open to that?
Oh man, that's a really, really interesting question. I wow.
Right? Because when we look at LeBron's career, outside of maybe like the Heat, when he succeeds, or actually with the Heat too, when he succeeds, it's because he has a second ball handler that can create their own shot and get it, right? Dwayne Wade was that guy in Miami. Kyrie was that guy in the second stint with Cleveland. And so AD is he's a top 5 player, or actually top 7 player in the league. But Dame can get his own shot.
Yeah, he can,
He
but he
can.
can't. But he can't play a lick of defense.
No, he cannot.
And here's the thing. While I like where you're going, and I think that you're heading in the right direction. I think part of the thing that we're forgetting as well is the difference in this Lakers team year over year was not just the regression of Anthony Davis. It was also the loss of Dwight Howard and the loss of JaVale McGee. And you might think about those guys as meme players, but those guys are defensive stalwarts, right? There's 6 fouls each, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're extremely athletic players. They can run the court, they block shots, and blocks and defensive stops lead to offensive plays.
Yeah.
And so while I think that Dame and LeBron together would be a absolute dream scenario, I mean, we can already look at Dame and another ball dominant player right now with CJ McCollum.
Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't work. And so I would be reticent to give up a guy like Anthony Davis, who I don't want to call him a transcendent or a generational talent, but he's the same height as Giannis, but he's more mobile than Giannis, despite the fact that Giannis is like, I don't know. He's such a gifted player. I don't think I would make that trade.
Okay. Yeah.
So would you make it?
With the way this team is constructed, and if we're bringing back people like Drummond, which I don't think we are, but let's say we bring back defensive stalwarts, I think I would make the trade simply because I think Pelinka and Vogel know about defense. I think the problem with this past off season is like they doubled down on defense when they really should have balanced everything out. That's why, when I was talking to the guys, and if any of them are listening, I told you guys, like, there's certain players that they were bringing in. I'm all like, it was either even or we're taking a loss, right?
Yeah.
I think the Dwight one really was, to me, the hardest one because if we were to have Dwight and AD got hurt, I think Dwight would have filled in well enough. To kind of do that, so then we wouldn't have to kind of seek out Drummond. We would have seeked out another shooter or things like that. But
it would if that trade went down, it would have to be Dame plus, right? Like it would have to be like Dame plus Robert Covington, or like I know this wouldn't happen because of the money, but like Dame plus what's the big man's name? Not Nurkic.
Yeah.
Like the money doesn't work, but like it has to be something like that because you're giving up so much.
Yeah.
To get, for such a short window. Because here's the thing, Anthony Davis is younger than Dame, one, and Anthony Davis henceforth is going to be the face of the Lakers once LeBron actually retires in the future.
Yeah.
Right. So I think I'd rather still build a team around around AD than I would around Dame.
No, I hear you. I think that's kind of where this focus, I think they just have to focus this year on, like, we have to assume LeBron after next year is either retiring or going wherever his son's getting drafted. Either or. We just have to assume that.
Yeah.
Like, to me, I do, because I don't expect him to re-sign with the Lakers after this next year. I think he's just a quick trip. Got his son through 4 years of high school. I'm out of here, right? But yeah, so also today, Woj wrote a report where the NBA Rules Committee is going to take a look at limiting unnatural shots to be able to limit the fouls on it. Fouls being called in games. Particularly, if you think about it, someone like Harden, someone like Trae Young, actually especially Trae Young, and someone like Luka, just to name a few, that would do things like that. What do you think about the rule itself, and you think this would be a good fix for the NBA?
Where the hell has this been all this time? It's not a good product for the game of basketball to watch someone jump sideways, jump forward with their elbows, kick their legs out into someone. And I mean, you named 3 guys who are probably the worst offenders, but you also have your Wes Matthews. You had your Dwayne Wades back in the past. You have your Jay Crowders. All these guys are baiting. Markieff Morris, always baiting to try to get fouls, in these really crazy unnatural motions. And dude, these should be offensive fouls. I don't know if you saw the play yesterday from Kevin Durant. on I don't know if it was PJ Tucker, but KD jumped forward into someone and like trying to draw a foul, and it's like, dude, that is an offensive foul.
Yeah.
Like that, like you're encroaching into the defender's space. Yes, we all love high scoring games. We love seeing guys drop 50 points, XYZ, but like you also have to give the defenders the ability to defend. Otherwise, what are they there for?
Yeah. I think I love this rule simply because Trae Young has made a mockery out of this. He is a great scorer, don't get me wrong, but he has what Harden used to do in Houston. He hasn't done so much in the Nets because he doesn't have to, because he has two other superstars if they were playing together. But he can draw fouls, and he's playing within the game. Now, I like the comparison that I was reading, that this, if they get this rule right, it will be like what the rip-through move was like several years ago. You remember KD just rips through everybody, and they were calling fouls, shooting free throws. They fixed it. People still rip through. They just don't shoot free throws anymore, right? It's just a side out now, and that actually prevents them from kind of keep doing it. The only person that egregiously does it now is like Embiid. He, for some reason, he's really good at it because these centers in their hands, like, I'm like, come on, dude, like, don't put it there. Give him up, right? So, but yeah, I think this is a good move. Like you said before, it's just, it took a long time. Like, I don't know where it was. They should have announced it a lot sooner.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I also would still, I've said this before on the pod, man. I'm glad they're looking at this, but they also need to look at continuation. What constitutes continuation after a foul? What is an and one and what isn't? It's so wild. Like in some cases, the guy has gathered, the ball was never put back on the ground. They made the bucket and like they called the shot off, and it's like, well, just a play just in another game or a couple of quarters ago, you called an and one for a different player. So why isn't it an and one in this case here? The league really needs to basically just be as consistent as possible so that we can take away the argument of like this game is fixed, or the refs are biased, or it's 8 versus 5. Because I get tired of hearing that shit. You know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous.
No, I hear you. I do get tired of that. So we're gonna move on. I think we're gonna do this each week until the next season kind of starts, or until we fill up enough coaching positions. But I kind of want to go through kind of the rumor mill and kind of place ourselves as the GMs of who we will want to run as coach. So let's start with this week, the Portland Trail Blazers. We saw the fiasco that was Stotts being mutually and the Blazers mutually parting ways, which Charles
mutually,
which Barkley phrased so
correct.
eloquently, like
he was correct.
Yeah, right. So but that's a whole other ordeal. But then Dame comes up and talks about, he wants Jason Kidd, and whether Jason Kidd has learned or not, he decided to stay away from that. He's all like, no thanks. Like, I'm kind of honored that he mentioned it, but not at this time. So I think today Woj reported that Mike D'Antoni, who's the assistant coach for the Nets, is interviewing for the job. Later this week, Chauncey Billups and also Becky Hammon from the Spurs are also interviewing as well. We look at this landscape and we think about the Blazers, and we know that this team is about to get turned and change. I would be shocked if CJ McCollum is still here at the end. I've been
saying this for years, Johnny. I'm sorry to interrupt you, man. This does not work. They need to end this experiment.
Dame is a very loyal guy, so I understand why CJ is still there. But I'm pretty sure a combination of like CJ and Zach Collins, they're going to be gone. I think the only two players I know are safe, if Dame decides to be, it will be Dame and it'll be Nurk. Everyone else. Baby. Oh, yeah. You got Melo as well, right? So, yeah, that Melo is Dame's guy, right? So,
shout out to Joe.
So, these guys here, they're going to stay. So, we know this team is about to change. These candidates, there's other candidates out there, but who do you think can actually go in right now and give this Blazers that extra oomph going into next season?
Well, it really depends on what kind of play style they're trying to play, right? I mean, okay, so first of all, if they pick up, if D'Antoni becomes a coach, are they going to be a offensive-oriented team where they're shooting within 7 seconds of the shot clock like they were on the Rockets, not playing any defense, they're just hoisting threes? I mean, it may be a decent fit, and I could potentially see them keeping David and CJ if he does become the coach, just because of the fact that these guys are high volume 3-point shooters and they're pretty accurate, right? 40-ish percent. They hover around that rate.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not going to be any good on defense, right? And so what do you do with Nurk, right? Big men don't prosper in the D'Antoni system.
Yeah.
So that's one. But then you bring in potentially Becky Hammond from the Spurs, and we all know that the tree of Greg Popovich is a very fruitful tree. I mean, it has roots all over the NBA. I would be more willing to give her a chance if I were the Osley family, just by virtue of the fact that she comes from a very good organization. You have Oregon is a very progressive city or state. Portland's a very progressive city, excuse me, and I mean, who wouldn't want to have the billing of having the first female head coach in the NBA? I think that she would be an amazing fit, not just because she's a woman, but because of the fact that she is a great assistant coach for the Spurs right now. Jason Kidd, we saw what he did in Milwaukee. He also indicated, as you mentioned a moment ago, that he wasn't even necessarily interested. We don't know if that means he's returning to the Lakers next year. The Lakers have a pretty star-studded assistant coach pool, with Phil Hannity, Jason Kidd. They have Lucius. What's his name? Last name? I can't think of his name right. His last name right now. But he coached the Memphis Grizzlies in the past. But we don't know if Jason Kidd is going to return to the Lakers or he's going to pursue any other head coaching opportunities himself, because there's also a job open down in Orlando as well. Obviously, you would definitely want to choose Portland over the Orlando situation. So if he's not choosing to be a candidate in Portland, he's probably not going to look at it at all. Mm-hmm. But if to get back in a roundabout way, I apologize for being kind of long-winded. I would probably give the deference to the Spurs, Becky Hammond.
Yeah, so let me read some of the assistants that have come from Pop's tree. We got Brett Brown, which, tank commander. Actually, no, that's
wrongfully fired, man. They use him as a scapegoat.
Yeah. Mike Budenholzer.
Yep.
James Borrego.
Mm-hmm.
Mike D'Antoni was there for a couple times to help him. Taylor Jenkins. Quinn Snyder. Right. Jacques Vaughn. His
Mike
tree...
Brown.
And Mike Brown, like his tree is really good.
Deep.
It's deep. It's good, and people kind of learn from it. And think about it: a couple of those guys won championships. Like obviously, when Kerr was there with Pop, he absorbed a lot of the stuff that Pop was kind of doling out. I think Becky Hammond would actually be really good, just because I think she understands what Pop's philosophy is when it comes to coaching and being modern about it. And I think Dame would be very accepting of this. To be honest with you, what was the joke you made about like these coaches being like in a carousel and you keep seeing like the same ones all over again, right?
I swear, man. It's like I'm in a simulation. It's like I keep on seeing all these damn coaches, and I'm like, I thought you were on the Magic, and now you're on the OKC, and you're in OKC, and now you're in Houston,
right? Because there's other openings that are out there that I think Becky Hammond would do good in those situations, but I think the Blazers one is actually primed, right? She played point guard when she was playing in the WNBA. She understands not only the position, but now I think with coaching with Pop, like she gets it and she knows how to draw plays. I'm pretty sure some of those plays, like Pop lets Becky draw
100%
less, right?
So when he gets ejected, who does he turn to?
Yeah,
it's
not Duncan. Right?
Absolutely,
it's Becky Hammond.
And Pop gets ejected quite often, so she spends a lot of time, in the driver's seat. I want to put this out there too, though, Johnny, really quickly, because you mentioned Steve Kerr. If we all remember when he was applying for that job with Golden State, it was between Golden State and New York, and people were like, "This guy he doesn't know what he's doing." We saw what he did in Phoenix. He kind of ruined that Phoenix team by trading Shawn Marion for Shaq, right? But he went to Golden State and he turned that team around.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, they were good with Mark Jackson, but like he unlocked another level for all those guys. Right. I think Becky Hammond could potentially do that for Portland as well, to show that Dame doesn't need to score 45 points a game. Right. He can become more of a facilitator. They can employ more of a motion offense. He can be, integrated into defensive schemes better. So I think that you got to look at and give these people an opportunity, because you never know what they're going to actually bring to you. And if it doesn't work out, they could always do what the Cavs do. They could just fire coaches left and right, and just pay them for the rest of their lives.
Exactly right. Oh man, that's crazy. All right, you guys. So this is actually our first episode. We wanted to test it out, see it. We're actually gonna end on this one last question. This is the first time we're gonna kind of end that, and that's me asking John a question. Next week it'll be the other way around.
Johnny, before we get to the last question, I do apologize. I just want to interject, and I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So today, for the listeners, is Monday, the 14th of June, and I have a question for you, Johnny. Are you more surprised that the Nuggets got swept, or that the Hawks have tied it up 2-2?
The
What's
Hawks
more
have tied
surprising?
it up 2-2.
I agree with you 100%.
This team, yeah, I first of all, I was listening to the game as I was driving home, and the Hawks were going on this run. And I don't know what Doc was really thinking, not trying to cut that run. I get it. Maybe he's trying to get these guys rest as he thinks it's going to be a long series. But if you have a chance to go up 3-1, you take that, because then they're going to be very motivated to stop and just get them done in 5 games. But now you're guaranteeing at least 6 games happening, right? This is kind of what is happening. So I think that's the crazy part. But yeah, I am shocked that the Hawks are tied 2-2 right now. So yeah, I am now interested, because I swear to you, I thought outside of one series, I thought all these were going to be gentlemen sweeps. I was going to be scared going into the conference finals, but I'm glad that there's a couple good series kind of going into this.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I'm going to just jump on what you said a moment ago. The longer this series goes, the worse it is for the Sixers. Now, 2 things. Danny Green is injured right now. He's out for a couple of weeks, right? So if they do eventually prevail in this series, that could buy them some time in the future to bring him back, early conference finals. And he's a big key for this team. But Joel Embiid, that dude, he's like Anthony Davis, right? Where it's like the longer you play, the higher the probability or likelihood that you're going to get injured. You cannot give this Hawks team any life whatsoever. And this Hawks team, they're like sneaky good, man.
Yeah.
Because this season, we didn't see them at full strength the entire season. For the listeners who, they may not realize, but Bogdanovich, he had an avulsion fracture, which is a terrible fracture early on this season. So they brought him in 4 years, $72 million. They expected big things from him.
Yeah.
And he was out for most of the time, but they bring him back. They have guys who can hit shots.
Yes.
And that's what you need in the playoffs.
Yeah. So this Hawks team, they're young enough to not think about the noise out there. Fuck. Yeah, right. The moment won't get too hot for them. So, All right, John. So before we give our plugs and then we end with the last big question that I'll ask you, Matt, Loxy, Infernal Melody, thank you for following. This is, like I said, a beta test run of what we're trying to do.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so it'd be great. So, John, tell us where they can follow us.
So you guys can follow us on Instagram at Couchin Courtside Pod, as well as Twitter, Couchin Courtside Pod as well. You'll find both of us probably more active on Twitter. Johnny's more so on IG. You can also find us individually, Johnny at JNO11, so that's JNO11, and you can find me at JSpeed04 on Twitter.
Cool. So we're going to end each one with one last question. Usually these questions will be a little bit either off the wall. It won't be so much about basketball, even though we will talk about a lot of different pop culture stuff as news kind of drops in. But like I said, this is a question I have for John. John, we are big fans of The Simpsons. Big fans. Let me ask you something. If I gave you these 2 one-time characters that were on the show, and you had to eliminate one of them, you can keep one and you can get rid of the other one. Which one would you keep and which one would you get rid of? It is between Hank Scorpio and Frank Grimes.
So here's my follow-up question to you. Is it for them to be recurring characters on the show, or
you would not get that episode ever? That episode is erased from existence.
Oh man. Frank Grimes, man. I'm sorry. Wait. Excuse me. Hank Scorpio. Hank
You
Scorpio, man.
you're gonna get rid of Hank Scorpio?
No, I'm
No, you're
keeping
gonna
Hank
keep it Hank
Scorpio.
Scorpion.
I'm
Okay.
keeping Hank Scorpio.
Yeah.
That is just like that episode is just like this seminal episode of The Simpsons for me. Like it's such a phenomenal episode of The Simpsons. It's beautifully drawn and illustrated. There's so many excellent jokes in that particular episode. And the funniest thing about it is that it kind of like has parallels to like companies that we know today, like Facebook. Like you know of them, like they try to do good, but like behind closed doors, like they're a really shitty company. so so I see a lot of parallels between what Homer was doing at the nuclear reactor, working for that company and like Facebook. So I'm keeping Hank Scorpio, man. What about you, Johnny?
Oh, I'm keeping Frank Grimes, man. like that episode, I just
It's brilliant.
it's brilliant because I guarantee. I mean, that is how everyone must feel about Homer. If there was
Yeah.
a sane person that came into this world, this is what the episode would look like. And I'm not even gonna talk about like Frank's illegitimate son in that episode. That just whatever, right?
Yeah.
But
It's non-canon.
non-canon. But
Yeah.
specifically that episode, it is one of, to me, the top 5 funniest episodes that I've seen because the diatribe at the end was so good. I mean, he was complaining about Homer having lobster for dinner, and I was just like, yeah, I would be complaining too. Like, what's going on here? You never been to space?
You've never been?
Like,
I agree. I agree with you, Johnny. It's definitely top two or top 3 episodes for me of season 8 of The Simpsons. I want to just push back a little bit, if you don't mind. The reason why I would take Hank Scorpio is because there's no other characters like him on The Simpsons. There's one more character on The Simpsons that is recurring that is somewhat similar to Frank Grimes. He just doesn't have a freak out. Now, I can do one of 2 things. I can let you think about that, and we can talk about it next time, or I can bring it up now.
you can let them simmer on that, and we'll talk
Okay.
about it next time. So
Okay.
thanks again for joining the stream and watching us, you guys. We'll see you next week.
Thank you guys so much. Have a good one. Stay safe.